Alright, so we're back. And okay, so where we left off, um, Morgana stole Giselle from us and she's hiding in the the observation tower, I believe. We assume she's hiding her in the observation tower. And in order to get there, we need 3 keys from the last previous masters. And we need to go to each master in order. So, the first master that we're aware of was Mel. Hopefully. And Mel is in the Rose Garden. So, if this is wrong, I can just go back in my saves and redo it. So, let's go with that. I make my way to the Rose Garden. The corridor leading there is a mess and the wooden door is rotting away. I can smell the flowers on the other side. Everything is different from when I was alive. From when Giselle planted and raised that single rose. A scene from the past spreads out before me. The field of once proudly flourishing roses is now withered and gray. Knowing how beautiful it had once been only makes it that much more dispiriting. A bitter breeze brushes past me. Solitude hangs over the garden like a thick fog eating away at me. This isn't what I wanted. Someone, get me out of here. Oh God, tell me that I'm not the bad one here. A young man's shadow stands off to the side, muttering listlessly to himself. I recognize his voice. Do you have the key? The boy and I have never met, but I feel like I know him quite well, like we've been acquaintances for many years. I know how polite and mild-mannered he is. I know how kind and how vulnerable, how human his heart is. However, very little of that boy seems to remain. This isn't what I wanted. Oh God. Please answer me. Someone get me out of here. Tell me that I'm not the bad one here. Answer me. Melrose. I know that's you. Huh? As soon as I say the shadow's name, it turns to face me. I still can't make out much detail, but it seems slightly less tenuous now. Who are you? How do you know my name? My name is Michelle. I once lived here in this mansion. Michelle. I know that name. I know it very well. But something's not right. You look different from the Michelle I remember. I am not the Michelle you know. Our names simply sound the same. Oh. That makes sense. She would never come to see me. I have a question for you. Do you have the key to the observation tower? I do. Would you please give it to me? I need to get into the tower. And what do you need there? There's someone there I need to find. That's all. It may not sound like much to you, but it means a great deal to me. You're not one of her prisoners, then? No. I came here of my own will. To find this person. Exactly. Then maybe you can help me. Help you? How? Set me free. Convince her to release me from this place. I am begging you. The anguish emanating from the boy's shadow is so thick it caused me to recoil. There's a thread of dark desperation in his voice. He has been in prison here for hundreds of years like... Has he been in prison here for hundreds of years like Giselle? Promise me, you'll get me out of here. Am I even equipped to judge whether that would be a good decision or not? All I know of him is his time in the mansion during the era of roses. I know nothing else of his life. I don't even know if I would be capable of keeping such a promise. Do I have the strength to save anyone other than her? Do you absolutely need the key? You won't agree to help me without it, will you? What? I dropped it. Over there. Huh? The boy is pointing to a thick bramble of roses. Despite the flowers themselves being wilted, the thorns are still sharp. It was an accident, I swear. But I didn't want to scratch up my arm, so I left it there. It's not my fault there are so many thorns. I really want to hit this boy. Why couldn't you have just said so? Because I thought if I didn't have the key that you wouldn't help me. There's only so much I can do, regardless of whether you have the key. I cannot promise you anything. Nor can I be the judge of you. I see. I do not have enough information to make such a decision. Cheap promises and superficial kindness will only serve to destroy the both of us. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to retrieve the key. What? You'll never get out of those thorns. I don't care if it's at the bottom of the ocean, I will have that key. You're wasting your time. I approached the brambles, reaching out for it with my right hand. From behind me I could sense the boy watching. First I attempted to spread the tangle, thorn-ridden stems so I could put my arm in without injuring myself. But they seemed to be made out of iron rather than plant, and my efforts proved mostly fruitless. The only opening is barely large enough to fit an arm in and resembles a toothy mouth of a beast. Looking around the garden, I can't find anything that looks remotely useful. I guess my only option is reaching in. That's not going to stop me. I lean down, inserting my right arm into the thorny caverns. Immediately they began ripping at my sleeves and gashing at my flesh. Blood spills down my arm. I'm long since dead, no longer human, but the pain is still agonizing, still very much real. Giselle. She doesn't bleed, she doesn't feel pain. I am not the same as her then. That doesn't matter right now. Focus on getting the damn key. Streams of crimson spread through the steel like tangle, gawing at my arm like a ravenous animal. Where the hell is the key? The thorny stems are twisted and layered, so thick I can't see inside at all. As I dig around blindly, I started losing feeling in my arm. An endless doge of pain. Hey, cut it out. You're going to lose your arm. I will not stop until I have the key. Don't ask me for help. I wasn't even considering it. I collect what remains of my gradually fading sensation and focus it into my fingers, praying even one of them will brush against the key. Damn it. But as much as I search, as much as I dig, I find nothing so much as resembling a key. Please tell me Mel did not lie and he actually has the key. Which means it must be deeper than I can reach my arm. Even so, I cannot give up. Hey, don't you frickin' lie to me. Please be quiet right now. I need to focus. I'm sorry, I do have— oh my fucking god, Mel. I'm sorry, I do have the key actually. You frickin' you what? I'm so sorry. It didn't look like you were willing to help even if I give it to you, so. Plus she told me not to give it to anyone for any reason. Hold still so I could beat you. I didn't mean you any ill will. You most certainly did. I'll give you the key, so please have mercy. No, fuck it. No, beat him. Fuck, just beat him because, oh god. Trembling in fear, the boy's shadow sticks out, a hand holding a key. The arm I used to dig through the thorns is so bloody and gashed I could barely look at it, but it does still function. And so I take the key from him with my right hand. That's one key. Yeah, why couldn't you use the other hand? That's gross. That's the idea. You're kind of a jerk, you know. That's a laugh coming from you. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? I know. I'm sorry, really. But hey, you're alive, so no big deal, right? But wait, can you actually say either of us are alive? I don't even know anymore. I do appreciate you giving me the key though. Seeing as it seems to be rather important to you. Hey, this person you want to get back, really worth going through all this for? She is. She's the one person who ever loved me. And she's waiting for me. I see. You know, I had somewhat— wait, hold on, let me check. Yep, I'm recording. I see. You know, I had someone that meant a lot to me too. Yeah, we know. Oh, your sister. Which one? Which? The one with flaxen hair, like me. If you happen to see her, do something nice for her, please. That, I would say, is your responsibility. Yeah, Mel. Yeah, you're right. But keep it in mind. Thanks. In the tale I witnessed, the boy pushed his sister away. For an understandable reason, admittedly, yep. But now he seems to bear no grudge for her. Did something else happen between them? Even if it did, I don't have time to ask about it. I'll be on my way. Alright, take care. There are 2 more keys. Watch out though. They're not the most friendly people. And they'll probably be even more enraged locked up like this. The beast. I appreciate the warning. Yeah, we know who's next though. The beast. If only someone like you had shown up sooner and taken the keys from us. Goodbye. After bidding me farewell, the boy's phantom dissipates into the shadows of the rose garden. I wonder if he gone back to mindlessly muttering his regrets. I should get going. To the cellar. To the beast. This is gonna be hard. How am I gonna tame a beast? I descend the stairs, opening the cellar's door. The first time I visited this room, the smell of blood from within it was nearly suffocating. Now the entire house reeks of it, and I have started to go numb to the odor. There's no one here, that's what you think. Am I in the wrong place? No. I began exploring the cellar, hoping to maybe find a key hidden away or abandoned somewhere. As I reach my hand out to investigate one area, a shadow leaps of the thickness of the thick darkness. Leaps out of the thick darkness. It's so swift I have no time to react. My body freezes in place. Man. Yukimasa. A shadow stands before me, holding the tip of a blade mere inches from my face. A key. You have a key. I do, yes. Cold sweat trickles down my back. My voice is shaking. There's no hiding it. And there's no hiding it. The shade appears to be glaring at me, though I cannot make out its face. After a few seconds, it withdraws its blade. Let me see it. The boy's key. Did he give it to you? In the rose garden, yes. Are you 2 acquaintances? How could that be though? You are from a completely different era and country. Who are you? No, never mind that. Who are you? Who you are is irrelevant to me. Are you human now? If you are speaking of my nature, then no is the only answer I could give you. You didn't kill me though. If you wanted to, you could easily skewer me where I stand. If that's what you want, I'll be happy to oblige. What did you come here for? For your key. I came to ask if you would give it to me. You mean to open that door? I need it to get into the tower, yes. I see. Take it. Just like that? Damn, that was easy. Ooh, that looked different. The man's shadows toss the key at my feet. I'm not quite sure what to think. I didn't expect him to give it up so readily. What? Take it. I won't stab you in the back while you're bending over. I thought you were supposed to hold on to this at all costs. I no longer have any reason to guard that key. In the past, I might have severed your head from your shoulders the moment you mentioned it, though. What point in the past? That's a question I wish I knew the answer to. Hey, do you know why I'm here? Where this place is, when it is? Why can't I get out of here? What happened to me? Tell me! I have no idea what's going on. Not a single goddamn idea. Neither do I. Get out. Take the key and get out of here. Get out! I can't bring myself to say anything to the enraged shadow, so I've followed his command, picking up the key and departing the cellar. I thought I was dead for a second. This makes two though. This is really quick for some reason. I thought these were going to be stories. What could have happened between these people? The painting mentioned a past with them, and Morgana spoke of the wicked men she cursed. Does that mean they did something awful enough to earn Morgana's spite? Right now though, I must push onwards. If I'm not mistaken, the final key should be in that room. The room with the billiards table. What is a billiards anyways? It's a thing. I should get moving. Once I have this key, I can get into the observation tower. I'm most certain Morgana is waiting for me there, which is so. So I gather up my resolve and hurry to the last room, not wanting to take even a second longer than necessary to getting her back. Wait, I didn't get to choose this room though. I can hardly believe my eyes when I step into the den. In the middle of the room is a large rectangular table. Several balls roll across the surface and perch on one of the corners. Looking down at the floor is her. Giselle, what? Giselle, what? The question of why she's here never crossed my mind. I feel elation to see her once more. There's no room for anything else in my head. I run over to her to put my hand on her shoulder. Thank goodness you're alright. And turn her towards me. What? What? Giselle. Giselle. I shake her, causing her head to droop lifelessly. There's not a trace of light in her unmoving eyes. Why? Giselle, why? Just say something, Giselle. It's a trick, dude. Say anything, please. This can't be. You can't be. You can't be. My mind goes blank. I can't catch my breath. The world is hazy. Why? Why is Giselle? Why did I have to find her like this? You know, Giselle, it doesn't look like that anymore, right? Why? I swore I would do anything. I swore I would never lose you again. No. This can't be. A thought crossed my dazed despair trod mine. It's probably nothing more than vain hope, but not a drop of blood spilled from my breast. Eh? That's right. She doesn't bleed. So this can't be her. This isn't her. Or maybe Morgana has the power to alter Giselle's very nature. Kill her with the flick of her wrist. No, I don't even want to think about it. There's no hope to be found down that path. All I can do is pray, beg for her to still be alive, or if alive isn't the right word, herself. My prayers bring me back to reality, which is when I realize there's something hard pressed against the back of my head. I hear a harsh metallic cling as a gun. What? Yeah. Jacob. A piercing bang ripped through the air as I dropped to the hard floor. My ears are ringing painfully. Through the cloud of smoke and confusion, I see a man's silhouette. Missed. It takes several moments for me to recognize the object in his hand as a gun. Not only because it's draped in shadows, but because I've never seen one with my own eyes. I had not witnessed what they were capable of through the stories. I would not have understood how terrifying they were. Is his name not Jacob? It's Jacopo. I've been mispronouncing his name, I know, but Jacopo. Jacobo? I'm still gonna call him Jacob, I'm sorry. Not a problem, though. I'll finish you with the next one. Now, you hold still, boy. Start running around like a rat and I can't guarantee you a painless death. Wait, hold on a second. What are you trying to kill me for? What are you trying to kill me for? Because you make too much damn noise, that's why. Don't tell me. You're the one who... What? I turn my gaze towards the large table. Giselle isn't there. It must have been an illusion after all. The realization sends a wave of relief through me. I still have a gun in my face though. Curious man you are. Does the table warrant your attention more than me? I have a request. Could you give me the key in your possession? That's all I need, then I'll leave and stop making a racket. I'm not sure you understand your predicament, boy. Because if you think you're in any position to be asking favors, you're dumber than you look. Ha! First off, I don't even know what key you're talking about. I don't believe that. The other two had keys. You're telling me they gave you their keys. It sounds like they really do know each other. See for yourself. I believe you should recognize these. Are you collecting them to enter the tower? Are you going to see Morgana? There seemed to be a hint of tension in the man's voice. Though I can't see his face, I can sense the waves forming within him. I brace myself for either rejection or hot lead. But the apparition gives me neither. Take me with you. What? You have the other two keys, don't you? Then you can open the door. I need your key. Bring me to the witch. Wait, slow down. What do you plan to do when you see her? What do you think? She has to... He's gone. She has to what? What was he trying to say? Oh, that looks cool. On the floor where the shade stood is a new key. Curious though I'm about his last Curious though I'm about his last words. Curious though I am about his last words. This make tree, I have all the keys now. Are you trying to round me up, Morgana? Are you enjoying yourself up there, showing me these phantoms and watching me squirm? Just you wait, I'm on my way. I give the room a brief once over before making... Wait, what? I give the room a brief once over before making my way back to the chapel. Rose, Beast, and Machine era. The keys fit perfectly in the openings on the lock, and when I insert the last one, it clicks open. The chain sealing the door falling to the floor. Hey, that rhymes. The waiting beyond this door at the top of the stairs. I start pondering what I can even do in a face-off against Morgana, which sends a nervous shudder down my spine. Yeah, what we're gonna do. I'm not going to back down regardless, but she is a witch, and I am a mere human. Formerly human. I am not a master swordsman, nor do I wield a gun. I have nothing at all which to fight her. I still have to confront the witch, though, no matter what. As laughably reckless as foolish I may be, I have no other option. I place my hand on the door, preparing to climb the tower where I once spent my last breath. Giselle locked safely away in his chambers at the top. That's just an assumption. There is also the chance she is not up there. The tower where I first met the witch. Wait, what? No hesitation. No hesitation. I need to click something? The sound of blood streaming down the stairs echo off the stone walls. Though I have begun growing numb to the house's otherworldly ornamentation, the sight of seemingly endless river of blood flowing down the spiral staircase sends chills through me. Every step I climb makes a splat noise. When I reach a window, I look out to see a churning reddish-black fog. Now, this brings me back. You climbing these stairs alone, just like the old times. Morgana. I waited so long for someone like you to show up. Someone with enough despair to resurrect me. Give her back. But now I don't see it in you. I don't feel one bit of that intense hopelessness anymore. Give her back. And here I thought we were cut from the same cloth. Morgana. Yes, I'll give her back. If you can make it to me without losing yourself. I will not give up. It doesn't matter what you do. Hee. Looking up, I can see how far the stairs extended. It's just a gaping blackness. I have no way of knowing for sure whether I'm getting any closer. Around and around and around and around. Beneath me, the blood river traces the same path in reverse. I start to wonder if the staircase even does end. If I'm not just eternally retracing my own steps. But I continue climbing regardless. It's all I can do. put one foot in front of the other and hope I make it to the top. Morgana, what is this place? What did you do to it? What is it? Why is the mansion you live in for a decade, of course? You look at this and tell me it's the same house. What's with the blood everywhere? And the tree shadows. Now, my dear, no need to raise your voice. And you're being impolite. One question at a time. Answer me. What is this place that's immaterial? Even if I were to give you an answer you found satisfying, what would that knowledge do for you? Your objective is to reach the top of these stairs and rescue the Giselle. Nothing more, nothing less, isn't that right? Or by chance you have taken an interest in me, despite never once asking me about myself before. My guts tells me that without knowing what this place is, without even the briefest glimpse at its nature, I won't be able to safely get her back. Without knowing what I'm up against, I don't stand a chance. Please tell me about this mansion, Morgana. About yourself. What are you, Morgana? A witch. No, that's not what I'm asking. Why do you have the powers you do? What are you? Yes, I get it. Humans feel the need to attach names to things and phenomena they don't understand. I understand that feeling very well. Which is why I'm sure you'll be rather disappointed when I reveal the truth. What do you mean? What I mean is, I'm an ordinary human. That's not possible. You expect me to believe a human created this illusion? Then are you saying I'm a magician or a wizard like you might see in a fairy tale? I would believe that over you being a human. Think back then, would you? Recall our time together. Did I ever once use magic? Did I control fire or wind? Did I create illusions? No, I did none of that. Because I could not. To you, when you were alive, I suppose you could say, I was naught but a simple ghost. A rather mischievous but otherwise powerless spirit. And I was nothing more to those 3 men either. The witch Morgana was never anything but a wretched phantom haunting this old house. But then, how do you explain this? Michelle, my dear, we're not the same beings we once were. We're different than we were in the realm of light, the era of the living. You figured that much out, though, haven't you? That you're already dead. Yes, I know. I know I couldn't possibly be alive. Yet still you view this world through the lens of the living. You make no effort to see it as the land of the dead. Tell me, why would you think that the realm of the living and dead are the same? Though the worlds behind each door were so vibrant, the mansion itself never had any color. They were the memories of the past, the land of the living, of times forever lost to us. Our lives have already come to an end, my dear. Every last soul within these walls is dead. This is the world that lies beyond the end. It is my world. This is the afterlife. Why get caught up in the minutiae? None of us had a future, so what reason is there for you to desperately obsess over taking Giselle back? Just like you, she's long since dead. She's a walking corpse. Is nothing I didn't know already. I didn't already know, but hearing her say it is like a kick to the gut. Dead or alive, she is still within this house, and my spirit found its way back too. Why then should I not wish for her to have a future? No matter what form it may take, no matter if my choice erase her from this world entirely, having seen what lies beyond the door in her heart, what happened in all those hundreds of years, I can never let her remain here with you, trapped in this world bereft of light, drifting aimlessly for all eternity. So determined you feel the need to raise your voice, but you're not going to budge on that point. I see. I ask you again, Morgana. Please tell me about yourself. How did you become a witch? How did you end up attached to this house? I want to hear your story. Oh, so we're getting Morgana's story. You honestly want to know about me? I do now, yes. But not for me, for her, right? Don't be shy now, it's the truth, isn't it? Besides, if you did say it was for me, not her, I might die of laughter. As you wish. You have seen many tales of people's lives since arriving here, and now you shall see mine. Though I ask you this, will you ride in despair with me? Will you endure maddening agony for me? Will you know pain enough to make you howl? Will you face despair? Again and again and again? As I said before, if that's what you want from me, let me tell you something though, my dear. It will not be as easy to watch as you imagine. If that's what you want from me, it will not be as easy to watch as you imagine. Now that you've reclaimed yourself, you will be able to feel all my pain as if it were your own, to resonate with it. Resonate with it. You no longer have your little guardian with you either. My guardian. She was always protecting me. You will have a wonderful time, I'm sure. It's a tale that could have only taken place in that era of miracles and spirituality. A wondrous and weird, senseless and stupid, hopelessly tragic. Will you watch it with me? Do I need to make a decision? Okay. As soon as the final word leaves her mouth, I'm engulfed in darkness, not even given a moment to brace myself. The tower's stairs crumble beneath me. At my feet I have nowhere to go. As I'm being battered by the roaring blood river, my consciousness mended with another. Oh. Oh. I, c- I carry within me the child of God. That is where it all began. The words of one foolish woman determined the course of my entire life. Before I was even born, my fate was decided. Did her claim come from fate? Was it her way of escaping reality? Did she do it for the money or fame? I don't know. I've been visited by an angel of the Lord. The village where she lived had suffered from years of poor harvests. It had been months since the last rain, and all the villagers prayed desperately to be blessed with successor. This is the witch's story. I am with child, though I have known no man. That's a lie. So proclaimed the pregnant woman in the midst of the drought. And on the day of my birth, the very moment I let out my first cry, a heavy rain fell down upon the village. The storms quenched the parched earth, nourishing the crops and saving the village. The villagers were astounded, for they had thought the drought would never end. As plump drops of rain poured down upon the village, they gathered around the newborn me in exultation. Ah, she is the child of God. Perhaps they would be more wonder in claiming I had magical powers. Perhaps it would make a better story if I were to say there were higher forces involved. But all these years later, here is what I truly think. It was nothing more than a fluke. An improbable stroke of luck. An unbelievably fortunate incident for my mother and the village. An indescribably unfortunate incident for myself. I am with child, though I have known no man. If that's even possible. Maybe she had fooled around with a man who had gone and abandoned her. And she spouted those lies to convince herself it had never happened. None of the village men made any claim to be my father. Perhaps he was someone else. He was someone else's husband, and as such he couldn't reveal himself, as adultery is a sin in the eyes of God. The girl they were praising as the child of God was indeed not more than an ordinary daughter of a wretched woman. At the time, though, I thought differently. I believed my mother's words, convinced I was a saint. And it gave me a sense of duty, of purpose, rather than superiority. As the daughter of God, I believe it was my responsibility to help anyone in need. So every day I prayed. I asked my Father what I could do, what I was meant to do. Not everyone is equally good, however. There will always be someone who lends their ear to the devil's whisper. One man claimed I was the daughter of a charlatan. He shouted for all to hear, "If you really are the child of God, then perform a miracle for us." Could he have been any more unreasonable? Miracles are neither magic nor parlor tricks. They are realized through the power of faith. A lowly villager has no place demanding God prove his own divinity. It is the height of arrogance. But the man refused to heed my words. So, having no other choice, I contemplated what I could do to show him I was indeed a saint. And blood was the spark of my inspiration. Michelle, the time when I live and the time when you live were not so different. Our views and belief about the world are very much the same. So you should understand that in our time blood was seen as unclean. It was a dreadful thing ridden with diseases, which is why we drain the blood from animals and purify the flesh before consuming it. But being a saint, my blood would have been different. Like the blood of the saints who came before me, mine will be blessed. I believed it would be able to clean the people's impurities. For my demonstration, I chose an elderly woman afflicted with a terrible disease. She was on her deathbed, and no one thought she would live for any longer than a day or two. The woman was overjoyed when I came to visit her, sincerely believing me to be a holy servant of the Lord. She gathered all the strength she could muster to climb from her bed and kiss my feet. I felt an intensely deep love for this woman. Placing my hand upon her cheeks, I said with all the kindness in my heart, "My beloved sister, partake of my blood." The woman agreed without a glimpse of hesitation, and so I pricked the tip of my finger with a knife and let the blood drip into her mouth. With 3 days, her health has improved enough for her to get out of bed unassisted. Seeing that, no one in the village doubted my power any longer. In fact, the man who had accused me of being the daughter of a charlatan was subsequently punished for his sins. He received much deserved retribution for challenging the daughter of God, for mocking her. But of course, being a saint, I forgive the man. He in turn repented and changed his ways, worshipping me as the true child of God. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was ecstatic, utterly elated. I felt like I was on top of the world and reveled in it. The villagers showered me with adulation, oh. They revered me, the daughter of God. Anyone who didn't was punished. And on top of that, my blood would cause miracles. Tell me, do you look down upon me for feeling the way I did? The actual child of God would never let herself be consumed by such base emotions, would she? But if you would give me a chance, I would like to explain myself. I was but a young girl at the time, and so a child, her mother is the world, and to a child a mother is the world. Anything she says is the absolute truth. So when my mother's claims so happened to coincide with a lucky miracle, my young mind was set in stone. I was a saint. My blood could heal the sick, and nothing would convince me otherwise. After all, I was but a girl of 6 years old. It's not my place to decide whether my blood truly had miraculous powers or not. If you think it did, then it did. Wait, if you think it did, then it did. And if you think it was all happenstance, then so it was. Miracles are brought about by fate. So the elderly woman who was healed was done so by the power of her own belief. Baseless hope and desire can at times make the otherwise impossible reality. You understand just how major a role religion played in our time, don't you, Michelle? Especially as someone whose life was taken from him in the name of a god. And you understand how powerful the word of mouth can be as well, don't you? It didn't take long for the word of a miracle-performing child of God to spread. Travelers from faraway lands came to our village, all in search of aid. Driven by a mixture of elation and duty, I give my blessings unto every pilgrim. Wow. Pilgrim. Wait, yes, correct. Pilgrim who sought them. I gave them my blood, yes. My young hands were perpetually covered in wounds. Running out of my skin on my fingers, I cut the back of my hands, my palms, and my wrist. Before long, they had turned into swollen, carved-up black and red horrors. And so I kept them wrapped under cloth at all times. The only time I uncovered them was to give blood to those who sought it. My lacerated hands were, in no certain terms, gruesome and unsightly. But the believers who came to see me all whelp at my selfless sacrifice. And so I came to cherish those wounds. There were some whom no miracle took place, but whenever that would happen, the villagers would come out and say, "The daughter of God is not to blame. You simply lack sufficient faith." Thus such incidents has no negative effects on my reputation as a saint. For 3 years I continued doling out blessings. One day, while I was offering a prayer, my mother let slip her discontent. "Why must you hand out miracles for nothing? Why must you give strangers grace? We should be getting compensated. We deserve remuneration. If we charge just a little bit for each blessing, we could be living much more comfortably." I was dumbfounded. How could the mother of a saint say such things? Helping people was my divine calling, and she expected payment. I nearly wept, hearing my mother's preoccupied with such worldly desires. So I explained to her how important this work was. I taught her that we were not to covet material wealth, that we were to dedicate our lives to the service of our fellow man. "You're right, my dear saint," she says, understanding. And I believe her. I fell asleep that night, convinced she truly understood and that there would be no more problems. But the next day, I was sold off. Men I have never seen before carried me by the arms and tossed me into a carriage. Confused and panicked, I stuck my head out, searching for my mother. Off in the shadow of the house, I saw her with a strange man, accepting a bag of coins. The carriage rocked back and forth as it rolled along a dirt road. Shaking and bouncing with it, I struggled with overwhelming grief and despair. It was perhaps the first time in my life I felt such a powerful emotion. I didn't know what I felt. I didn't know what I felt so much despair over though. Obviously it was over my present predicament, but I wasn't sure it was about what about it hurts the most. Was it that I have been pawned off like a slave? Was it that my mother, the mother of a saint, had been blinded by money? Was it that the villagers had watched in silence as a disciple of the Lord was thrown into a carriage? Or was it that I, daughter of God, lamented my misfortune like a mortal? I decided it was a trial. My Father, the Lord God, was testing my worthiness of being his daughter. So I choked back my urge to cry and sat there in silent contemplation. For almost 3 weeks I rocked around in the carriage. The coachman treated me well enough, but I'm certain it was only because he didn't want his precious cargo dying before he could deliver it. He did not by any means think me the child of God. The 3rd week the carriage arrived at a city. It was much larger than the village I had grown up in, with many more people crowding the streets. Something about them felt different too. They all spoke in a tongue foreign to me, which is when I realized I was far away from home. I was delivered to the lavishly decorated mansion of the region's lord. Brightly colored flowers bloomed wildly in the garden as guests laughed and ate extravagant meals. And in addition to them, there were probably 4 times as many slaves moving about the grounds, getting a range of looks from everyone we passed, from smartly dressed men to scrawny, emancipated servants. I was led to the Lord's chambers. The Lord was surrounded by beautiful women. Perhaps they were slaves, or perhaps they were prostitutes, I couldn't tell. Among them were some girls hardly older than me. They all wore thin swatches of cloth barely covering themselves at all. The Lord looked me up and down. With a laugh he said, "Welcome, daughter of God. You will be performing miracles for me now." Miracles are not something to be performed for one single person's benefit, I replied, shocked and furious he had just said something so utterly blasphemous. In response he said, "I bought you. You are my property. You have no rights to an opinion." But I would not have any of it. I entreated him to give up his indulgent lifestyle and devote himself to the servant of the Lord. The more I pleaded, the deeper his creases on his face grew. Thinking back on it now, it was hardly surprising. A 9-year-old girl was scolding the most powerful man in the region. I believe it was my duty and I was only doing what was right, but he surely saw it as incredible arrogance. So the Lord forced his will upon me. He bound my hands and feet and cut me without my permission, filling a goblet with my blood and passing it around to his guests. A saint's blood and good fortune to all. That was when I realized the Lord was only interested in the approval of others. He reveled in their envy as he pranced about showing off his curious new toy. Me. He didn't need my miracles. Neither he nor any of his guests were affiliated with disease or misfortune. They were all richly blessed. Every time he threw a banquet, he drained me of my blood. It became nearly impossible to find a spot either on my arms that wasn't swollen reddish black gash. And soon, because my arms weren't providing enough blood for him, the cutting spread to my legs. I live in a haze of half consciousness. Honestly, I'm amazed it didn't kill me. Though perhaps the Lord was simply taking care not to take any more of my blood, any more than my body could spare. Watching the wealthy partygoers laugh and sip my blood through bleary eyes, another wave of despair came over me. My miracles, my blood, were not meant to be an appetizer at a feast. They were meant for the sick and the poor. But despite my wishes, the Lord persisted to squeeze me dry day in and day out for his own enjoyment. For a while I was convinced it was all God's test, that it was part of his will, part of his plan for me, his daughter. That if I could make it through this trial, I would be allowed to go back to helping people. That man would celebrate my success, envy me, worship me. That sinners would face punishment. That divine retribution would be delivered unto all who had wronged me, a saint. With each passing day, my spirit grew more twisted. Would anyone have believed that scared and bloody girl tied up on the floor in the banquet hall was a saint? Unlikely. This was no charitable gathering but an unholy Sabbath. Yeah. Perhaps it was cursed by my corrupted spirit. Perhaps it was my heart's way of crying for help. Or perhaps it was the devil giving me my witch marks. But no matter what the cause, during one of the bloody banquets I underwent a transformation. I was half conscious as usual when one of the guests pointed at me and shouted something. His face went pale, as if he were afraid, which I found quite curious. The Lord then approached me, grabbing me by the hair and lifting my head. He yelled something, but I was far too gone to be able to make out what he was saying. Suddenly I found myself released from my bonds, but my body had grown so weak from being tied up for so long, I didn't have the strength to hold myself up. And so I collapsed to the floor. I was still trying to figure out what was happening when the Lord drew a sword, raising it high above his head. His words in that moment reached me with perfect clarity. "You're a damn witch wearing a saint's skin." A witch? Why was he calling me a witch? I was the holy daughter of God. I had certainly never made a pact with the devil. What could have given him that idea? What was in store for me now? Had God performed some kind of miracle for him? Dozens of thoughts and questions floated through my mind as death hung over me. I couldn't comprehend anything, and so I didn't feel any fear or anger at my impending death. I was simply curious. What had happened to me? Before I had the chance to find that answer, The Lord swung his blade. Without warning. Without any time to prepare, the darkness drains away. And a second later, I crash into the stairs hard. Ow. My right at my ear, I can hear the hiss. That's not even hiss. The river of blood. The world fades in and out of view, giving way to a very real image of a past I never lived. I can practically feel the fire in the eyes of the Mad Blood Banquet's guests. My vision distorts. I can't regain my focus. Whose blood is streaming down the stairs? Is it hers? Is it mine? Who am I? A saint? A witch? Is what I'm seeing through the lens of clarity or madness? Wait, no. I am not her. I am Michelle, no one else. It hurts, doesn't it? It's hard to breathe, your chest is on fire, your vision is blurry, it's dark, it's lonely, it's scary. It's frustrating, it's disheartening, it's expurgating, isn't it? What you're feeling is exactly the pain I felt. I reach my hand out in plea for help, which is when I see something I can hardly believe. Oh, there's scars on my hand. Both my arms are covered in gashes, blood flowing from them without end. The raw flesh beneath my skin has been exposed to the open air. Ah. Nah, it's just blood on hand. I'm not seeing any oh wait, there is gashes. Never mind. All I can bring myself to do is scream. That pain, her horrible past, is doing everything in its power to break me. That 9-year-old girl's sickening experiences are twisting and constricting and crushing me. Why is this happening to you? Are you really that slow, my dear? You're empathizing with my pain. Empathizing? Yeah, empathizer. You're just that kind-hearted, Michelle. You said you wouldn't give up, didn't you? That you would make your way to me. Then surely this wouldn't be enough to do you in. Of course it won't. Mustering up every last bit of strength I began crawling up the stairs. The red river beats against my open wounds, stinging painfully. The simple act of lifting my arm or leg is almost unbearably agonizing. The blood dripping from my lacerated arms mixed with the blood already soaking in the tower. So this is the pain Morgana suffered. Do you despise everyone, Morgana? Did your resentment at your mother's betrayal, at the people who came seeking your blood, at the Lord who took your life, turn into hatred for all mankind? Your perception of me is still incorrect, Michelle. My grudge is only against a select few. Think about it, my dear. Of the 1,000 million billions of people living on this planet, my world is comprised of but a minuscule fraction of that. Hatred for all mankind? No. What I feel is not nearly so nebulous. Although, if I had died still believing I was a saint, maybe I wouldn't have such a well-defined mission. Are you saying the Lord didn't kill you? Oh my, did you actually think that was the end of my tale? Despite all your big talk, you're afraid of having to suffer through any more of that, aren't you? But you're the one who said you wouldn't give in. So go on. Know my pain. Without losing your mind. Oh god, here we go again. So she didn't die. Oh wait, I didn't read that. Once again, my surroundings crumble. I have no say. I have no chance to object. Before I'm dragged back to that repulsive banquet, I reach out, stretching my hands as far as it will reach. But all I can grab in is darkness. My bloody body sinks back into the abyss. The pain becomes more than just a memory, eroding away at my consciousness. And we're back here. You're a damn witch wearing a saint's skin. Maybe if I had died then, I wouldn't have become the witch you know now. But that's all conjecture. Theorizing about what could have happened is an exercise in futility. But no, I did not die that day. I brought together by constant mistreatment, the Lord's slaves chose that moment to start their revolt. When he swung his blade, someone bumped into him and it was knocked off its course. I didn't have the strength to get to my feet, so I simply watched the chaos unfold before my hazy eyes. It never even occurred to me that I should try to escape. At some point during the riot, a young man, one of the slaves, grabbed me by my bloody, limp arm and led me out of the Lord's manor. The young man brought me to a slum, a place where people banded together in their hardships, barely scraping together enough to eat every day, let alone pay the taxes demanded of them. By the time we had arrived at a small brothel located a ways into the slum, the fog was starting to clear from my mind. I knew where we were, and feeling the gazes of those scantily clothed women, I trembled. In a sense, that was possibly the most frightening I had ever been in my life, despite everything else I had been through. The idea that I had fallen so far I would have become a prostitute scared me to death. After all, I was a saint, and saints are supposed to retain their purity. Spreading my legs for any man who gave me enough coins would shatter my very identity. As all that was going through my mind, I probably shouted no in protest, because the slaves gave me an aspirated look and told me he hadn't brought me here to become a prostitute. He said he knew someone here, someone I could trust, and that he would give me a room. I had trouble believing him though. I couldn't trust the word of a prostitute, someone who valued money more than their own body. It was all a trap, I was sure. One day they would tell me I had to work. Nothing he said would convince me otherwise. Apparently sensing my mistrust, the slaves gave me an apologetic frown and handed me a mirror saying, even if I did, you couldn't get any work looking like that. I could not believe what I saw. That couldn't be my face. It had to be an illusion. There was no way. That was not the face of a saint. It couldn't be. It wasn't real. It wasn't possible. Patches of skin had fallen off my face, exposing the raw, red flesh beneath. It looked quite similar to what had been done to my arms and legs. Except my face had never been cut before. Looking at myself in the mirror, I doubted my own sainthood. The thing in my reflection was a hellish abomination. It was the twisted face of a witch. And although I was shocked by what I saw, at the same time it answered several lingering questions. It explained why the Lord and his guests had panicked at the sight of me. It also explained why he had said I was a witch wearing a saint's skin. Over the course of dozens of banquets I had participated in, my face must have mutilated, twisted into this ugly, sickening, monstrous thing. The sight of what I had become sapped the last bit of willpower from me. Not because I was particularly fond of my face or thought myself especially beautiful, but because it crushed me to see everything saintly about me crumble away. Test from God or otherwise, I didn't have the strength left to attempt to overcome it. Deciding I would rather be dead than struggle any longer, I begged the slave to kill me. Taking one's own life was a sin. If I did that, I would not be able to return to my father's side. And I wanted to ask him why I had been put through such tribulations. But the young man refused. He said, completely missing my intention, that if I persevered, a good fortune will eventually find me. He said if I lived on, I would eventually have a chance to get my payback. I had no such worldly concerns, though, but if one would take my life, I had no choice but to live. Wait, what? I had no worldly concerns, though, but if no one would take my life, I had no choice but to live. I despised life at the brothel. The men who came to buy their services were disgusting buffoons. The kind of people who would think they could deceive God. And the women fawning over them were just as repulsive. That said, I had nowhere else to go, which meant I was forced to suffer that sickening place. But by the time a year or so had passed, my feelings about it had changed. The woman of the brothel took good care of me, treating me like a sister. At first it was just irritating. I was a saint. How could a saint have prostitutes for sisters? But over time I got to know them better. I grew to appreciate their circumstances and hardships. Despite barely having enough money to keep food on the table, whenever they had a little to spare, they would use it to purchase medicine. Ointments to apply to my arms, legs, and face. And as a result of their generosity, my arms and legs started to look almost human. But nothing had any effect on my face. Occasionally the slaves would drop in to check on me. The other men thought me ghastly and wouldn't get anywhere near me, but he was different. And every time he visited, he would say, "One day I will show you the world." And to tell you the truth, I was beginning to grow attached to it all. My time at the brothel was probably, all things considered, one of the brighter chapters of my life. There I was neither a saint nor witch, but an ordinary human girl. For the first time, I felt like my life had meaning beyond my assumed divine purpose. I was even beginning to feel kind of happy. And with each passing day, my interactable worldview was gaining a little flexibility. My intraceable... Am I pronouncing that right? And with each passing day, my intractable... I'm just gonna change it to my immovable worldview was gaining a little flexibility. Perhaps I could perform miracles, but that didn't necessarily mean I had to be the daughter of God or a saint. Maybe I was just a regular person, who happened to possess some unusual abilities. Ridiculous, isn't it? Despite coming to accept my humanity, I refused to let go of my miraculous powers. They were the last thing protecting what I thought of as myself. But to me, at the time, it felt like a very dramatic change of heart. 3 years after the revolt at the Lord's Manor, I had my 12th birthday, for which they threw me a little dinner party. The women all pitched in to bake me treats, and the young slave man was there too. I was happy. I thought that if life could continue on like this, I would be fine not going back to being a saint. But for some reason, happiness always seemed to slip away as soon as you got your hands around it. No one sincerely wants to lose it, so why must they? I certainly didn't mind not being miserable. Let me tell you what happened that night. One night, on the night of my birthday celebration, bandits attacked the brothel. Now, bandits were hardly a rarity in that time, so everyone was always on the lookout, and we never went out at night. They wouldn't stop at robbing you either. They were armed with blades that would frequently kill their targets if necessary. But cautious as we were helpless against a direct raid. Who raided you? The brothel fell into a panic, screams echoing in the night. The customers were carved up and left for dead. The women were bound and stowed away to be sold. My peaceful world shattered in an instant. And the next thing I knew, I was some slave trader's merchandise. I don't know what became of the prostitute who cared for me or the slaves who brought me to them. I assumed the women who were sold and the young man slaughtered. But regardless, I found myself being rocked around in the back of a carriage once more. The carriage was packed so tight you could barely see the floor, and it smelled like death. Sweat, urine, feces, every foul odor imaginable, compressed into a tiny space. There were both men and women there, nearly all of them muttering or groaning or weeping. Everyone was young, ripe to be put to work. It didn't take me long to realize what fate awaited these people and me. And when I did, I just sat there in silence. Then for the first time, I cried. I was experiencing, I believe, a very human emotion. I was sad. Hurt that I have been taken away from a place where I was happy. From the women at the brothel and that young man. It crushed me. And no longer did I wonder why such a thing was happening to the holy daughter of God. Something about my tears must have seemed strange to him. What? Something about my tears must have seemed strange to him, because one man saw me and said, "Why are you crying?" He was a curious man. To start, he looked very different from anyone else. The color of his skin, the length of his nose, the shape of his eyes. Everything about him was new and unusual. Hesitantly I replied, "I am sad I didn't get the chance to show my gratitude to the people very dear to me." The man fell silent, looking as though he was in deep thought. He was deep in thought. I had no idea why he asked me that, but something about him made me uncomfortable, so I couldn't bring myself to ask. Several hours later, the man suddenly stood up. The guards had no patience for anyone stepping out of line, and they didn't look like they would hesitate to kill us either. So surprisingly, one at the back of the carriage drew his sword and pointed it at the man. What was surprising, though, was what happened next. The man, his hands shackled like the rest of us, leapt for the guard, slamming his fist into his face and stealing his sword. The entire carriage was in shock. The guards were too stunned to effectively react, so they were quickly cut down. And because one man uprising had taken place between cities, there was no one the slave traders could ask for help before they were slaughtered. In the blink of an eye, it was all over. And there was nothing human about what I had witnessed. Is that Yukimasa? Is that the beast? The man who killed him? If I had to describe it, I would say it was as though a wild beast had attacked. It was Yukimasa. The man ruffled through the slave trader's clothes until he found the keys, which he brought to me, ordering I unshackled him. And so I did as he commanded. Once they had enough time to process what had happened, the would-be slave applauded. Their wretched souls have been saved. And for the moment I believed so too. When the man's hand was free, he rolled his shoulders a couple times, made sure everything was in place, and then he began his massacre. Oh God. Screams of agony filled the carriage as he ran his sword through the helpless men and women packed inside it. Bloods and guts were splattered against every surface, and those who tried to escape did not get far before being mercilessly skewered. It was like a scene out of a nightmare. I was frozen in place. Not out of fear, but because my mind had shut down. I couldn't make sense of what was happening, so my mind rejected it. And with my brain having given up, my body was no more than a lifeless puppet. In short order, all the slaves were dead, and I was sitting in a pool of blood staring at the man. He pointed his blade at me, and with a little smirk he said, "Why didn't you run?" In turn I asked him, "Why did you kill them?" The smile vanished from his face, and after a few quiet moments of pondering, he replied, "Because I felt like it." "And why haven't you killed me yet?" I asked. To which he gave a curt, "I don't know," then drew his blade and wandered off into the distance. And then I was all alone, surrounded by corpses. I glanced down, and half of someone's face was looking back up at me. The beast. Wrapped in absolute darkness. Warm blood spilled onto my cheeks, my hair, my skin. Chunks of human flesh rained down on me. Make it stop. Pitter splatters, pitter spatter. There was no end to the deluge. The smell of death fills the air. I'm struck with a wave of nausea, so strong I can't hold back the contents of my stomach. But when my mouth opens to vomit, blood pours into it. Oh. Let go of me. Dead bodies grab at my ankles, dragging me down. To where? Hell. Or to the mountains of corpse. Now do you understand that there was a time... Wait, what? Now do you understand that there was a time, but if briefly I was happy, when I felt human emotions. But I wish I never had. If I had remained confined in my Daughter of God shell, then I doubt I would have felt so much terror at the sight of death. I can't say anything in response. I can't form words. I feel what she experienced, the massacre she witnessed, the limp flesh piling up around her. Even more than twice her age is enough to drive me mad. The fact that a 12-year-old girl had to experience something so unspeakable devastates me. Tell me, my dear, do you pity me? Do you sympathize with me? If you feel bad for me, then you will remain with me. You'll feel my pain and my despair with me. Won't you? The witch cackles echoes through the piles of bodies. There's not a speck of light, and hideous death lingers everywhere. Helpless to resist, I'm dragged down into a deep dark ocean. An ocean of blood. So I'm guessing all these stories, all these sections are all the sins that has been committed against her by Mel, Yukimasa, and I'm guessing this is Jacob. This story is gonna be Jacob, sins against her. Now on with the story. I was at a complete loss for some time after that. I didn't want to return to the city because I knew there was no one left who would take me in. There was only the Lord who had bound me and drained me of my blood. So I wandered the roads, no destination in mind, and nothing to defend myself but the clothes on my back. Frankly, I'm rather surprised I wasn't attacked by bandits. After walking for days without food or water, my mind was hazy and my exhaustion at a peak. In the distance I saw a lake. So driven by my thirst, I turned my unsteady feet towards the water, not caring that it took me off the main road. And it turns out that was the correct choice, because there was a small cottage beside the lake. Smoke rising from the chimney, telling me it wasn't abandoned. Out of sheer desperation, I knocked on the door. No one answered. The door wasn't locked, so I slowly, hesitantly pushed it open. And beyond it I found an old woman sitting dead in a chair. The woman was a witch. By trade, that is. It appears she had a deep knowledge of medicinal herbs, using it to make an assortment of medicines. In her cabinet were dozens of small glass bottles containing dried, powdered leaves and crushed berries, among other things. On the fire was a cauldron, liquid bubbling inside. The woman looked as though she was asleep. Presumably she had passed away of old age, for there was no signs bandits had been rooting through the cottage, and she had a look of absolute serenity on her face. Looking over at the woman's dead body, I didn't cross myself. I envy her. Dragging the woman's body by her feet, I dumped her into the lake. Do you think doing so makes me a bad person? Makes me unsaintly? Well, I didn't have anywhere else to go, and the owner of the cozy cottage was no longer of this world. There was no reason I couldn't fill the home, and her steed was there. I deserved to have somewhere I felt comfortable after everything I had been through, didn't I? And so I took up residence in the old witch's cottage, and remained there until my 16th year. By 16, a terrible cynicism has taken root in my heart. I had no trust for people. I shut them out, building high walls around myself. After such tumultuous, bloody childhood, it was all I could do to protect myself, to keep my young spirits from cracking. Nevertheless, travelers would on occasion pay the witch's cottage a visit, seeking her medicines. Whenever someone arrived, I would cautiously crack open the door, telling them they could trade for whatever they wanted with food, and I'll never show my face. One day a young man showed up at the cottage. My sister had fallen very ill, and she desperately needed medicine. He was very soft-spoken. There was a distinct kindness in his voice, which I thought unusual, curious. What kind of person could he be? What did he look like? What expression did he make as he spoke? To satisfy their curiosity, I snuck a peek at him through the cracks in the door. He was a handsome young man with flowing flaxen wait, what? Flowing flaxen hair. Mel! And upon seeing me, he didn't flinch back in disgust. He smiled. According to him, his younger sister has fallen gravely ill, and though they had tried a number of remedies, she was still bedridden. The medicines I gave him had no effect, but he persisted in his quest, visiting me again and again for new combinations to try. He wanted nothing more than to relieve even the slightest bit of his sister's suffering. And moved by his dedication to his family, I too wanted to do anything I could to help. For the first time in years, my world encompassed more than my small cottage. When the young man came, he would ask not only for medicine, but to go on walks with me. He volunteered to spend time with me, despite my horrifying appearance. It's not healthy to stay holed up inside all the time. You got this beautiful lake right here. What do you say we take a little walk around the shoreline? He said with a smile, taking me by the hand. We spoke as we circled the lakeside. His voice was always soft and pleasant, like a ray of light shining through the cracks in the walls. When I was with him, I felt like I could be an actual person, an ordinary girl. He talked about his sister more than anything, and whenever he did, he was at his brightest and most melancholy. I'm gonna say melancholy. The young man had been a member of a noble house, but disputes over who was the rightful heir had forced him and his sister out. Shortly after that, his sister had fallen ill and was now bedridden. I'll take anything at this point to make her better. I even take a miracle if I can get one. That word, muttered beneath his breath, sparked my memory. I was a saint. No, you're not. No, you're not. My blood had healing properties. No, it doesn't. I had no reason to hesitate. Someone needed my help, and who deserved it more than this kind-hearted young man's sister? So I decided to tell him what I really was. That my blood had miraculous powers. That's gonna lead to tragedy. That it had saved people. That the moment I had been born, the drought plague my village had come to an end. That I have been known as a saint, the daughter of God. I told him everything, and he believed it all. He led me to his house, where a pale, sickly young girl laid in bed. She was a sweet little girl with the same flaxen hair as her brother, who looked like she would have been quite spirited if not for her ailment. It was touching to see the two siblings sitting there together, quietly holding each other. I would gladly give my blood for the two of them. And so I made a new cut on my arm, which had healed considerably thanks to the slave and the women of the brothel. I let the girl drink of my blood. Neither of them had any doubts about my sainthood, and because they believed, a miracle occurred. The flaxen-haired girl recovered enough to get out of her bed. I was extremely proud of myself. I felt like, for once, I had actually saved someone's life. The only issue was, she didn't make a complete recovery. For a few days after drinking my blood, she was in good health, but her condition quickly regressed. I was deeply perplexed by this. A miracle had undoubtedly taken place, but it was only temporary. Now though, I believe I can explain what happened. Her recovery was nothing more than a placebo effect caused by her fate. But that's something I couldn't have known at the time. We were all three perplexed, and we were all three disheartened. Nevertheless, I was prepared to give my blood as many times as I needed. Whenever her condition worsened, the young man came to request more, and never once did I turn him away. On the contrary, I enthusiastically offered her my services. Over time, though, the hope in his eyes began to fade. He asked me on fewer walks, and he seems hesitant to look me in the eye. I assume it was out of discomfort or out of guilt. Out of shame about asking for my blood. But I don't think his concerns were for me, rather himself and his sister. As I mentioned earlier, blood was considered unclean in our time. And not only was I giving mine away, I was having his sister imbue it. Embedded. Looking at it that way, it would hardly be a surprise for him or anyone else to think what I was doing deprive. Wait, what? Or anyone else to think what I was doing depraved. Oh, what I was doing depraved. As time passed, the flaxen-haired young man seemed to grow more and more disturbed by me. That was what I got for opening up. That was what I got for letting his kind, warm light shine onto me. The moment things went bad, he pulled away. There were times when I thought I shouldn't have done anything in the first place, but regardless, I held fast to my original decision. I would put myself on the line for them. No one else, just them. Even if he was afraid of me or had no interest in seeing me, I would continue offering her my blood. And I was firm in my resolve. One day, though, I received a new visitor. The young man was still the only one I would show my face to, the only guest I had let into my walls. So as usual, I took the man's request from behind the cottage door. But I could hardly believe my ears when he began speaking. "Are you the witch with the miracle blood?" First, how did he know my blood had powers? Second, why had he called me a witch and not a saint? Third, why did he sound like the man who had slaughtered the slave carriage? Oh no. I told the man he had to leave, that I would not be opening the door for any reason. In response, he said, "I am in need of your blood. Could you not spare a little?" My blood was for the sick and needy. I would never spare a drop for a murderer like him. And I told the man exactly that, demanding he leave. All I could think about was the pile of bodies, the fountain of blood. The man drenched in crimson, wearing a ghastly smirk. I tremble behind the door, fearing he may go on another such rampage. But instead he gave a simple "as you say," and then went on his way. I let out a deep sigh of relief, which is when I realized tears were rolling down both my cheeks. like an ordinary girl. 3 days later, the flaxen-haired boy showed up at my cottage. I'm sorry for being so distant lately. I want to talk things over. Those 2 sentences were like a light shining from above. I wanted to talk to him too. I wanted to take a walk around the lake and listen to him talk about nothing. I wanted to experience the warmth of his world once more. And I wanted to tell him about the terrible man who has been here a few days earlier. But how scared I had been. I wanted him to tell me it would be alright. I wanted to talk to you too. I said, opening the door without a second thought. The light of the sun was so bright all I could make out was his silhouette. I couldn't see the look on his face or the look in his eyes. A gentle breeze blew past. My mind froze. How could this be happening? What did it mean? Why? How? What was that man doing, standing behind him? Why was he carrying a sword? Why was he coming into my house? And why did he swing it down, severing my arm? I was in a daze. I couldn't make sense of anything. I didn't want to. My left arm fell to the floor before I even knew what was happening, and then my legs gave out. The pain, searing and unbearable, came a few moments later as I was laying in an ever-expanding pool of my own blood. I did something then that I hadn't done before, that I had resisted doing no matter how much blood the Lord stolen from me. I screamed. It was a hideous, visceral noise. A sound I have never thought a saint could make. The same ear-splitting howl the slaves had made as the man had butchered them. I writhed, I wailed, I wept, I crawled across the ground of my own blood. Through my own blood. I begged and begged and dragged and begged for my life. The man walked over and picked up my severed arm, and then shockingly he tossed it to the kind-hearted young man. After which he said, "That's your share. Should last you long enough." Share? What did he mean by share? What was he talking about? Why had he given him my arm, and why had he taken it? Why was he talking like they knew each other? Why? I had spared blood for him when he asked, hadn't I? So why was he doing this? Was cutting my arm off and stealing it easier on his consciousness than simply asking? You understand how I felt, don't you? You can put yourself in my shoes, can't you? The young man refused to look me in the eyes. Holding my bloody arm in his trembling hands, he fled from the cottage as quickly as his leg will allow. The man did walk over and pick me up. I had neither the strength nor the willpower to resist. Holding me in his arms, he began to speak, telling me the things that I didn't want to know, things I didn't want to hear, but he didn't care. Nothing personal, I just need your blood. Without it, she'll lose her church. She'll lose her church. Don't take it personally. Tell me, is there anyone in this world who wouldn't feel a bit spite after being put through such torture? How was I supposed to let that slide? No one's that much of a saint. My trust had been betrayed, and I was supposed to turn the other cheek? A man had barged into my home uninvited and cut off my arm, and I was supposed to smile and take it. Is there anyone anywhere who doesn't feel even the slightest bit of hatred ever? Is there anyone in this world who could just laugh and brush off this level of abuse? Tell me, is there? How could I not hold a grudge? How could I not despise them? How could I possibly forgive them? Tell me, please. Tell me, how could I? She needs the money. I need some way of getting enough money to keep her church running. So the Lord made me an offer. If I brought him the witch with the miracle blood, he would finance the whole new church for her. The Lord. Why him again? Why couldn't he leave me alone? After trying to kill me during one of his blood Sabbaths, why was he after my blood once more? Had he learned it really did have miraculous powers and decided he wanted me back? You get to be the sacrifice. To keep her church from collapsing, to keep her world from collapsing. Sacrifice? Excuse me, what? And what all this about keeping her church from collapsing? You murdered a cartridge full of innocent people. And you're trying to protect a church. You. Are you out of your mind? Churches are where people go to commune with God. To speak with my Father. How dare you soil those sanctified grounds with your filthy hands, you beast? It's insulting, sacrilegious, repulsive. Just what do you think we are? So don't take it personally, witch. I'm not a witch. I am a saint. I was a saint. My blood exists to do the Lord's work, not to satisfy the avarice of men. Why is this happening to me? The man brought me back to the city, but instead of taking me to the Lord's manor, he brought me to a church on the city's outskirts. Though, to be honest, it looked more like an estate than a church. The church also served as a hospital, offering free care to less fortunate children, the poor, and the infirm. That was when I learned why he had said they needed money. The owner of the church offered unconditional assistance to anyone who came. Even when food and supplies ran low, they would ration their own in order to keep helping others. As a result, the church was perpetually on the verge of collapse. The church was run by a woman, something exceedingly rare for the time. There were no priests. All management were handled by a single nun who everyone referred to as the saintess. I was a saint. Why was this woman, who didn't have the ability to perform miracles, being worshipped like she did? Why did the people of the city idolize her? Why were their smiles all directed at her? Why was I not in her place? The man carried me to the top of the observation tower. It was there that I had my reunion with the Lord. I was to spill my blood for the people of the city, but also for the Lord's profit. He was not offering free aid, but selling it as medicine. He claimed it was a miracle elixir, telling no one that it was actually my blood. It was mixed with a beautiful red wine, and drinking it would cure you of any ailment. If they knew it was actually the blood of a witch, they would think it unclean. They would fear it. Laughing. I'm not doing that. I remained in prison for a long time. In the beginning, the swordsman guarded me. Though before long, the flaxen-haired young man showed up as well. Presumably, one severed arm wasn't enough to keep his sister healthy for long. In listening to their conversation, I learned that to ensure no one else could get in, the observation tower was sealed with 3 locks. The Lord, the swordsman, and the young man each held one of the keys. I was their secret, locked away in the tower for them to drain of blood away from the wandering eyes. Time went on and I grew progressively weaker. I lost the will to eat and the will to live. My only view from the tower was the clouds through a window high up on the wall. Occasionally a pigeon will fly in, sometimes a butterfly, and I will glare in envy as it fluttered around, free to come and go as it pleased. And soon it was spring. Every spring the church held a festival to pray for the coming year's harvest and the people's well-being. I could hear the bustle from far below through the windows as everyone rushed to prepare. I heard the flaxen-haired girl's voice, who had regained her health drinking my blood. I heard her brother's voice, who had betrayed me. I heard the nun's voice, who played saint in my head, and my steed. I heard the barbaric swordsman's voice, who had chopped off my arm. I heard the Lord's voice, the root of all my suffering. I heard people praising the saintess, though I, the true saint, was locked in the tower. I heard people thanking the Lord for his generous donations and the miracle medicine, though it had all come from me. Prop up on my suffering, they cheered and clanked glasses of my bloody wine. Those merry, peaceful, cheerful, spirited sinner's voice resounded in my tower. And at noon on the day of the festival, the church bell tolled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and with the 12th chime, I died. The bell's last pedaling faded into the distance. The tower door swung open. Standing on the other side of it were the 3 men. They must have wanted to drain a little more from me to use in the feast. But they arrived at the worst possible moment. The flaxen-haired young man was the first to express consideration. Why, I never wanted her to die. Was she not eating? The Lord gave my corpse a casual glance and said, stone-faced, "Seal the tower off. Understood? No one finds out about this." How can you be so calm? Do you understand what you've done? Oh, this is the same conversation from the beginning. Haha, pinning the blame on me. How nice it must be to be able to distort reality with panic. The swordsman who has been silently observing the Lord and the boy conversation interjected. You're just as guilty as any of us. Not only did they not mourn my death, they argued over whose fault it was. There was no regret, no remorse. That's the witch? There was no regret, no remorse. The young man muttered absent-mindedly, I never wanted her to die. What did his intention matter, though? It was his betrayal that had ultimately tethered me to this mansion. But the fact that they didn't grieve my death, and instead squabbled among themselves like filthy rats, was the final straw. How could I not despise them? I don't believe I actually had the power to perform miracles when I was alive. It was all fate, the illusion of belief. I was neither a saint nor a witch. The blood wine was only effective because people placed their faith in the other saintness. I was only ever human. But then, in that moment, an actual miracle occurred. My father bestowed upon me his power, or perhaps it was the devil, who lent me his strength. I was looking down upon my own dead body, my own wretched self. There was nothing beautiful about the pile of bones I had become. I could almost smell the rotting flesh. That was once a saint. I laugh at the thought. It was absurd, ridiculous, and infuriating. They would pay. Those who had cast me into this hell, who had mocked me, who had done this to me, who had made a witch out of me. Hatred coursed through me. Revulsion at everyone on these grounds still smiling. They would know just whose dead shoulders their little party was resting upon. If they wanted so badly to call me a witch, then a witch I would be. I would kill them, every last one of them, place a curse on their souls. And so I made my wish. Most people might consider it a curse, but to me it was most certainly a wish. And my father, or maybe the devil, granted that wish. From the garden, there rose a scream. The flaxen-haired young man knew that voice better than anyone. He went deadly pale, darting down the spiral staircase until he reached a window. A young girl was on her knees, vomiting blood in the grass. The young man let out a yelp as he descends the remainder of the staircase. As soon as he reached the garden, he lifted the girl in his arm, but she had already perished. Realizing this, he cried to the heavens, saying the one thing he should have kept to himself. The witch killed her. The blood of the witch killed my sister. That wine you're drinking is no medicine. It's the blood of the witch. You all drinking the witch's blood. Crushed by the loss of of his only family, the young man picked up a silver fork and plunged it into his own throat, ending his life. Naturally, there was an uproar. Goblets of wine crashed against the earth in rapid succession, as the people holding them fell to the ground and vomited or convulsed. The nun was the first target of their outrage. What she had claimed to be medicine had turned out to be the blood of an unclean substance. Turned out to be blood, an unclean substance. The blood of a witch, no less. A servant of the church, a servant of the Lord, had given her followers blood to drink. And at this, their indignation surged uncontrollably. The people surrounded her, tying her up and throwing her to the ground. As they prepared to inflict righteous justice upon her, the swordsman soared down the stairs and into the garden, plunging his blade into anyone standing near the nun. The cries of agony ringing through the church grounds were ear-splitting. It was no longer a place of God, but hell on earth. Hell built up by the hands of man. Hell painted red with the blood of their brothers. The people armed themselves with anything they could find and went after the man. As much of a beast as he may have been, he stood little chance against such numbers. It's the fate of a beast to be exterminated by those he terrorized. And once he was gone, the nun had no one left to protect her. She too was consumed by their frenzy. All that remained was an inextinguishable inferno, hysteria and despair, madness and outrage, and no outlet for it. It was a revolt that had made the slaves' uprising at the Lord's Manor look like a game. Eventually their rage found a new target, the Lord. It was only natural, for he was the true villain. He was the one who had given money and the witch's blood to the church. He was the one who had profited off of it. Above all, people often resented those who stood above them, particularly in times of unrest. The city resounded with cries for the Lord's head, and he looked down upon it from the safety of the observation tower. He could do nothing but watch as his domain burned. I can only imagine how painful that must have been. Before long, having seemingly have made his peace, he began descending the spiral staircase. He opened the door at the bottom, revealing himself to his people. Before the door had swung all the way open, before he had a chance to say his final words, someone ran a blade through his chest. With that, the raging furor mostly settled down, but it was hardly the end of the destruction. Mere days later, a plague befell the city. Dreadful black spots covered the flesh of the infected. They writhed in pain, screaming and vomiting blood. Ghastly howls echoed through the streets, as though the whole city has been possessed. It became a cursed land. In their disease haze, the people muttered again and again, "We have been cursed by the witch." In less than a week, the entire city was dead. My body was left abandoned at the top of the observation tower. And as if to seal the curse away in their final days, the people shuttered all the windows, wrapping the house in darkness. It's possible. That was no miracle either. You can easily explain what happened to them. Locked away for so long in that dirty tower, maybe I caught some kind of disease. And then, when the people drank my blood, they too were infected. Hardly anything out of the ordinary about that. The first to die, the girl had already been ill. Her body merely chose the worst possible time to yield to her ailment. That was all that had happened. Indeed. It was nothing more than a fluke. An improbable stroke of luck. An unbelievably fortunate incident for the city and those 3 men. And an indescribably fortunate accident for myself. But I wish to believe it was a miracle. That even my blood didn't have healing properties. And even if I wasn't a saint, my wish, my curse, was what caused that uprising. That was my miracle. Granted to me by God, or the devil, I choose to believe that. And that my miracles took on its true form thereafter. My curse had brought death upon the 3 men. But for whatever reason, my ransom was far from sated. They had died. So what? Death is but a transient agony. It's nothing compared to what I went through. So I made my next wish. I wish for their reconstruction. I wish eternal suffering on their souls. I wish to trap them in a never-ending cycle of pain and hatred. This was my wish for the flaxen-haired young man. He treasured his dear sister, and he desired a quiet life. So I wish for him to have just that. And I wish for his dearly beloved sister to love him more than anything in the world. For his world to be destroyed by love gone too far. This was my wish for the beast-like man. He was conscious of his tendency for violence, and he yearned to be more human. So I had his inner beast toned up just a little. I saw to it that he would never be human, so he would never have the peace he so desired. My wish for the Lord was more straightforward. He seemed to have a great affection for wealth and authority, so I ensured those were the only things he could ever have. Who needs love or friendship when you could be drowning in power? Once he had lost everything, his solitude would be his only companion. Wishes can come true, as long as you always hold fast. Never stop wishing. Never surrender. They can only come true. They can come true. Eternal suffering on their souls. An endless cycle of reconstruction and unavoidable tragedy. Tell me, my dear, do you sympathize with me? Will you curse them with me? Will you take my hand and rival them with me? This time when my body crashes into the tower stairs, I'm unable to make a noise. The obstruction is less mental, more physical. The excruciating pain, Uh, so it's so intense I can't even echo the scream. Oh, um, hold on.